Top 10 most dangerous female prisoners in the world. Robbers, terrorists, serial killers, and drug dealers, every other day we find someone new to the world of criminality. When it comes to the most evil and violent criminals in society, it's easy to assume of men as the offenders of the worst crimes. But while most violent crimes are perpetrated by men, women may also commit sadistic and surprising acts, since women have been a major part of it from the very beginning too. And that's when the state needs to step in and lock it up for good. For today's video, we will be giving you the top 10 of the world's most dangerous female prisoners who rock the world with their barbaric and cold-blooded crimes. But before anything else, please make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell to keep you posted on our latest updates. Let's begin. To support that claim, here are the top 10 most dangerous female prisoners in the world. At number 10, Renee Okobi of Canada. As of 2017, Renee Okobi has the dubious distinction and was the only female dangerous criminal in Canada. The word deadly inmate is a recognized Canadian legal term. A convicted criminal listed as such can be put in prison for an indefinite period of time. But what did Okobi do to be part of this ill-starred club? In fact, Okobi's prison career started in 2000 when she was just 21. The young woman was sentenced to 3.5 years of imprisonment for drug offenses and armed robbery. The crimes were committed after a traumatic childhood and adolescent years. For the most part, the infringing of Okobi actually took place behind bars. But by the time she was in jail for 3 years, her imprisonment had risen to 21 years. After more than one attempt to take refugees and other violent incidents in custody, her bad actions resulted her the custody of the daughter she gave birth behind bars. At number 9, Kathleen Fulberg of Australia. Australian criminal Kathleen Fulberg is serving a 40-year imprisonment for murdering 4 of her own children over a period of 8 years from 1991. In 1969, Fulberg's own father killed her mother, stabbing her 24 times. She married Craig Fulberg in 1987 and had 4 children afterwards. Caleb died just 19 days after his birth in 1989. Patrick died at the age of 8 months. Sarah died suddenly of 10 months, and eventually, Laura, born in 1999, passed away at the age of 19 months. In 2003, Fulberg was prosecuted by the Supreme Court of New South Wales, Australia. After the murder conviction, she was sentenced to 40 years in prison with no chance of parole for 30 years. In the 2005 appeal, her term was reduced to 30 years without parole for 25 years. Fulberg is locked up at the Silver Waters Women Detention Facility for maximum security. She's locked up in a segregated cell to protect her from her other inmates. At number 8, Katherine Burney of Australia. An Australian couple, Katherine and David Burney, reached the headlines in November 1986 when they were prosecuted for kidnapping and rape of 17-year-old Kate Moore. The teenager had taken a pair of lifts before they assaulted her, but she managed to flee and warn the police. It turned out that she was the only survivor of Burney to survive. Police have discovered 4 bodies found buried on the backyard of their house. At their verdict, the Burneys were also considered to 4 life terms after they pleaded guilty to 4 murders. Katherine Burney completed her sentence in Bandiop Women's Jail, where she worked as a librarian. David Burney was murdered in Casuarina Prison in 2005. Katherine Burney has consistently been denied parole, and in 2009, Attorney General Christian Porter declared that she will never be released. At number 7, Juana Barraza of Mexico. Juana Barraza's first rise to fame was that she was a Mexican professional wrestler called the Lady of Silence, but her name turned notorious after she was arrested for the murdering of an 82-year-old woman who had been choked to death with a stethoscope. Indeed, long before she was arrested, the murders of many elderly women prompted the press to mark the serial murderer, the Mataviejitas. In Spanish, means old lady killer. Barraza was presented with a tribunal in 2008. The prosecutors claimed that she was murdered as many as 40 women all over the age of 60. And in the end, she was indicted of 11 murders and sentenced to 759 years in prison. The maximum punishment required in Mexico is only 60 years. But since Barraza was 51 years old at that time, she's inclined to spend the rest of her human life behind bars. And because of her crimes, few can disagree with that. She would be punished with her inhumane violence. At number 6, Rebecca Butterfield of Australia. Rebecca Butterfield's first period of detention came in 1996 when she was sentenced by an Australian court of drug offenses, illicit entry and misdemeanor. But her crimes began to run out of control in 2000 when she was convicted again for assaulting a neighbor who had been evidently attempted to stop her from self-harming. During her 3-year sentence for that assault, she stabbed another inmate, Blue Slim Ward, with 33 stab wounds. Butterfield was sentenced to 12 years in prison for manslaughter for murder. However, in the course of that term, she committed a series of attacks on other inmates and staff. In 2016, at the age of 41, Butterfield was finally scheduled to release but was sentenced to another 5 years on account of her extreme violent behavior. In reality, Butterfield is so unpredictable that she has to be transported between 2 high-security prisons to provide further solace to the guards. Alright, we're halfway through the top dangerous women inmates in the world. How are you going to find these dangerous women so far? Keep on watching. We still have a lot more of them in store for you. At number 5, Rosemary West of United Kingdom. Rosemary West and her husband Fred were 2 of the most infamous and sadistic serial killers in the United Kingdom. She found Fred when she was 15 and she was 28. The 2 of them began living together in such a caravan park with Fred's daughter and his stepdaughter. In 1973, the couple was accused of sexual assault on a young child. Rosemary worked as a waitress and allowed her husband to sexually assault his daughter, an abuse she herself took part in. Since the early 1970s, Rosemary and Fred have reportedly killed 10 girls, which included 16-year-old Heather, their own daughter. Fred was accused of sexually assaulting another daughter, and Rosemary was also placed under arrest for child abuse. But the trial failed when the daughter refused to testify. The case, however, led to a thorough investigation in November 1995. Rosemary was guilty of 10 murders. She was ultimately sentenced to life in prison in Low Newton County, Durham. Fred, who had committed to 30 murders, was killed in jail before the trial. At number 4, Katherine Knight of Australia. Katherine Knight was born in Australia in 1955 and sentenced to life without parole for the murder of her partner, John Price. This domestic murdering may seem mundane relative to the other offenses in this roundup of vulnerable women, but after you read the details of her gruesome crime, you'll see why she's on the list and why she was the first Australian woman ever to receive such a harsh sentence. In October 2001, neighbors noticed that there was blood on the front door of Price's property and alerted police. Knight was found in a coma in bed, having overdosed on pills. Price's body, or most of it, was found in the hall. After stabbing him 37 times, Knight had skinned the body and hung the skin on a butcher's hook. She then cut off his head and cooked some body parts, serving the flesh with vegetables and gravy, and laying the plates out with place names, the names of Knight's children. At number 3, Joanna Dennehy of United Kingdom. Joanna Dennehy was 31 in 2013 when a judge sentenced her to spend the rest of her life behind bars for the murder of 3 men. The case later became known as the Peterborough Ditch Murders, as all 3 of her perpetrators were discovered in the trenches near the English town. She killed the 3 men by stabbing in the space of just 10 days, and then stabbed 2 more men in another town. At number 2, Rohana Choudhury of United Kingdom. While all the women mentioned here are terrifying, Rohana Choudhury is the only one who was a terrorist. Born in East London in 1989, Choudhury completed the final year of a degree course at King's College in London. But she did not leave her studies long before she made an attempt on the life of a British Member of Parliament in May 2010 inspired by her support for Al-Qaeda. At her appeal, the court was informed that she had undergone an open session arranged by MP Stephen Timms in the local library. Pretending to shake his hand, she stabbed the MP twice in the abdomen. Timms survived the attack and is now sitting in the House of Commons. Choudhury was found guilty of attempted murder and jailed for 15 years in the Bronzefield prison of maximum security. Last but not the least, at number 1, Mary Beth Tinning of New York City. Born in Duanesburg, New York in 1942. Mary Beth Tinning had a variety of low-level positions until Ellis Hospital in Schenectady took her as a nurse's assistant. In 1965, she married Joe Tinning. Their first child was born in 1967, followed by 7 others. The couple also adopted a boy, making up a total of 9 children. By the end of 1985, every child was dead. Some of the deaths were attributed to sudden infant death syndrome, while others were due to multiple illnesses. But during a police inquiry into the death of the last child, Mary Beth admitted that she had killed 3 of the youngsters. In the end, she was just charged with 1 murder. Found guilty in her 1987 appeal, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison and repeatedly refused parole, serving her time at the Bedford Hills Women's Correctional Facility. Quite gruesome, isn't it? If you think it's just men who can prosper in the world of crime, think again. Comment your thoughts down below. We would like to know your conclusions. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up so we can upload related videos. If you're an abundant true serial crime stan, remain seated as the next video is starting.